Welcome to Literacy Mindset, where education leaders from across the country share strategies for improving K-12 instruction today and preparing for the challenges of tomorrow. The stakes are high. Students are facing new academic demands, and educators are navigating an ever-changing educational landscape. Each episode, we explore the most effective literacy initiatives, innovative tools, and strategies that are reshaping education. Whether you're an educator looking to improve student outcomes or passionate about driving meaningful change in schools, the Literacy Mindset brings you the insights and strategies you need to stay ahead. This is where education leadership meets real-world impact.
All right. Well, I am really excited for another episode of the Literacy Mindset, and I couldn't be more excited about the guest that I have today. Dr. Nancy Mather, a professor emeritus from the University of Arizona, the Department of Disability and Psychoeducational Studies. Really excited to have you on, Dr. Mather.
Thank you.
And Miss Judith Bliss, founder of MindPlay and passionate visionary for promoting student success. Welcome, Judith, to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, really excited to talk about a number of things today, mostly the relationship between MindPlay and its sort of origins, and also broader topic around students with disabilities and what does it take to find reading success in the world today and how we go about it. So I'm going to jump in really quickly and kind of start off with some of the first line of questions. Let's see, Judith, we'll start with you. Let's just go real basic right from the beginning. What inspired you to develop MindPlay, the reading coach, and how has it evolved over the years?
Well, Jeff, it was a personal mission. Because I'm dyslexic, I had a lot of difficulty learning to read, which I never understood until later in life that I was dyslexic. So that was the beginning of my quest. And then, as you know, if you are dyslexic, you can pass that gene on to your children. And in my case,
Right.
I had a son, who luckily was not dyslexic, but he was dysgraphic, which is a form of dyslexia. He could read easily, but he could not put a sentence together and get it on paper. It was a difficult process for him. There were a lot of tears and all that kind of thing. And so I went searching for solutions. Eventually, I found a school called the Landmark School, and they provide one-on-one instruction for kids with dyslexia. And I convinced them to take him for a summer. And he went to summer school. After 6 weeks, he was writing paragraphs and stories. The only problem was this cost over $20,000 back in the day. And that's a little bit high. So I realized that most parents probably couldn't afford this type of instruction. So I was working with a speech pathologist, and we embedded the Landmark Orton Gillingham approach into the program. And we also put in a 20,000 item AI table, which would allow us to duplicate what a good teacher would say to a student when the student had an error. So that was kind of the beginning. And when we finally got it done, we offered it to the market at a price that both parents and teachers could afford.
Okay.
So that's the beginnings.
So you had this vision. You had a son that struggled. After realizing that you had also struggled with dyslexia, you found a bit of a solution. It was very expensive. But so you then said, is there a way that we can package something that makes it more available, more accessible to students? And that's where MindPlay was born.
And that's right. And basically it was the question I had in my mind is it possible? Because technology back in that day was not what it is today. And so I was hoping.
Yeah, it was. Well, how many things are born out of hope, right? I love that.
Right.
I love hearing that. You hope for this opportunity. What were some of the roadblocks? I mean, you're talking about the technology today and what you saw as a vision, those many years ago. What were some of the roadblocks that you faced along the way?
I think the primary roadblock was overcoming teacher hesitancy to use software. Teachers are taught in school that only a teacher can teach reading. Okay, and they believe that. And the truth is, back in the day, it was true, but it's no longer true. So that was one of our biggest roadblocks, and you can understand why they were hesitant. It went against what they were taught. Another roadblock was the state of the computers at the time. We knew we were pushing the envelope on what was possible, but we thought we could do it. And so we basically worked on doing it. The biggest problem that we had in the initial program were that computers didn't have good data access and the speeds
Right.
that we needed, because we wanted to make sure that when the kid entered something, they got an immediate response. And that was very difficult back in the day. And we finally figured out how to do it. So those were it.
Those were the roadblocks, and you kind of navigated them. And obviously, as more technology became available, you were able to make refinements and improvements over some time. All right, Dr. Mather, let's weave you in here a little bit to the conversation. Obviously, you've had a passion for working with individuals and students with learning disabilities. Where does that come from? What inspires that passion? How did you know? When did you know that you had that passion?
I'll just go back a little bit into history of my education. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Graduated from high school in '68 and went to University of Colorado, got a BA in English literature. Well, nobody really tells you back then you need to get a job when you're done, and there's really nothing you can do with a BA in English literature.
English lit. Okay.
I thought, what, I couldn't even get a job as a librarian. And I thought, what do I do? So I decided to go to Aspen and ski for a year. And
Perfect.
why not?
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I love that.
Oh my gosh. And so I remember being at this party, and there were about 60 people there, and I wanted to write down someone's phone number. So I'm going around asking people if they have a pen or pencil, and nobody in the room had a pen or pencil. And it just I thought, I need to go back to school. I mean, this is not where I need to be talking about the schools on Ruthie's today. I mean, I need to go back to school. So I went back and got a teaching certificate in English. And then I got a job in a middle school teaching junior high kids. So the English curriculum. So it was like, okay, we had to spend 10 weeks on diagramming sentences. Now, you spend 10 weeks with middle school kids diagramming sentences. We had a week on poetry. And I just thought, this is not what I want to do.
Okay.
So then I moved to Flagstaff, Arizona. I got a master's in behavior disorders, and I got a job in a middle school in a self-contained classroom teaching children with behavior disorders. One of the things I just realized was these kids are upset, they're mad, they're frustrated because they don't know how to read. And a lot of their behavior is really stemming from the fact they're struggling with reading, and they don't feel like they fit into school. They just kind of feel hopeless in things. And, I thought I didn't learn anything about teaching reading in my master's program for behavior disorders, not a thing. So I really had, no idea,
No formal training on what to do there.
Nothing. I had no idea what to do. I just knew they couldn't read. And so that sort of started me on the path of, we really need to catch children early before they get to middle school and have failed for so long. And I need to know how to teach children how to read and, ways to facilitate growth in reading for kids. So that's kind of how it, started.
In the self-contained classroom in Flagstaff, Arizona is where this passion was born. Okay. I love it.
Yeah.
It's easy to talk about how that has shaped your professional life from there. So kind of tell us a little bit about what happened. You went on and got a doctorate, obviously. Maybe give us a little bit more of what that moment in that classroom sort of changed the trajectory of your career.
Right. And so, then I decided I worked in a clinic for 3 years, decided I need to go back and really learn more about teaching, students how to read and also understanding why they struggled so much, to learn to read. And this is a little bit of a funny story, but back then I wanted to go to Northwestern because Dr. Doris Johnson was sort of the most famous person in the field of learning disabilities. I was all set to go there. Then in 1979, my friend Lynn Jaffe and I went to the Learning Disability Conference in San Francisco, and we met Dr. Samuel Kirk, who was at the University of Arizona. So he invited us up to his room and said, I'd like to talk to you about the program in Arizona. And so, he started pouring us shots of Jack Daniels. And by the end of the night, both Lynn and I were going to the U of A.
Guess we're going to U of A.
So I often laugh about, was it Sam Kirk or Jack Daniels that got me to the U of A? But it was kind of a funny story. But
that is an excellent story.
Anyway, but it was, that was a very lucky thing because he was a, amazing mentor. So it was very fortunate.
And then it sort of shaped into work with students with dyslexia. It seems that a lot of emphasis was part of your career there. So can you talk a little bit about working with students with dyslexia and where that came from?
Well, again, spent many years working with students with dyslexia and tutoring students with dyslexia. And you could see again, they can learn. It's just it's a different approach than children who learn to read easily. And so then my passion became, more about training teachers to work with students with dyslexia, to have a little bit broader reach than just me. Let's train teachers so, you get a much, bigger effect than just one person, working with one student. And so then I got a job at the University of Arizona, training teachers to help children and work with children and assess children with reading problems.
Okay. All right. Well, now if we were obviously creating a movie, this is where the cut from Nancy's life goes back over to Judith's life. Wait, we've got now a doctor studying how to help teachers with dyslexia. We have a woman, a visionary, who's just decided that she's going to create how do these worlds combine? Where's the intersection point? Which one of you wants to speak to that?
I had tried to get a hold of Dr. Mather and we never could connect. And so I hired a graduate student of hers, to do some research for us. And he did, and we showed him the product, and he said, Dr. Mather needs to see this. And I said, really? And he said, oh, yeah. I said, do you think you could get her in here? And he said, yes, I can. And so a couple of weeks later, Dr. Mather shows up in our conference room, rapidly tells me she's got a half hour because she's got a meeting she's got to go to. By the way, she stayed there 2 hours before she actually did leave.
Okay.
And
caught her attention.
What did you say?
So I missed the faculty meeting that day. So thanks a lot. I had a faculty meeting at 2. It wasn't.
Hey, it must have been pretty compelling, right?
I have to say, I really sort of had an epiphany at that moment when I saw what they were doing, because I always thought it had to be a teacher teaching reading, and it really made me open my eyes to the power of a computer and technology in terms of supporting and enhancing reading instruction for students. And so it sort of just opened a new world to me in terms of, the possibilities in terms of enhancing, reading success for children.
So you're sitting there in a conference room. You thought you were going to give her 30 minutes. You gave her 2 hours. You missed the faculty meeting. Your eyes are now open to this new idea of, students being able to learn reading skills through a computer. But Judith, one of the things that we find that, I don't know, you could say maybe blows people's mind, really is the number of different ways, right, that you kind of thought to put into the initial Reading Coach product on with explicit instruction, just 15 different ways in some cases how it gets taught. How difficult was it to capture that level of systematic intervention?
Well, my reading coach is based on the science of reading and cognitive learning theory, and we had to combine them both. So we developed my reading coach module by module. Through observing kids on the program, we were able to continually adjust it until we got it right. For instance, we learned that kids tune out of the instruction if it's too long. So we knew that we had to essentially keep our instruction down to 150 words or less. This essentially was a little restrictive, but what it forced us to do is have a lot more levels of instruction for kids to be able to absorb it. So the students receive a targeted instruction. They absorb the content and build a mental model of what they already knew and what they just learned. As the student tests the model through practice, he identifies that his model is faulty. And then what happens is we provide another level of instruction to help him revise and build a new model. And this process continues until the kid really understands the concept and builds the correct model and is able to master the content of the program. Let me tell you all about a lot of programs essentially just do practice. Okay. And practice is good if you had good instruction, but if you didn't have good instruction, then you're practicing. I liken it to golf. Are you a golfer, Jeff?
I've been known to play the game. I'm not sure that I'm willing to call myself a golfer, but I'm very familiar with the game.
Okay. So what we do essentially, think about this. Let's say you're not a good golfer. And so you want to be a good golfer and you go out and practice. But if you just practice a bad swing, you're going to continue to have that bad swing, right? However, if you go and get an instruction and then you practice what he told you or she told you, okay, you have a better shot at success in your practice. And the next instruction, he'll fine tune a little more and eventually you'll be a golfer. That simple.
It's that simple. Okay, Judith, why do you think instruction-heavy, mastery-based approach allows students to be more successful than others that maybe just do practice? I think you gave us a little bit of that with the golf analogy. Is just emphasis on instruction?
Practice can only do so much. It can essentially, you don't learn from practice, okay? Unless you make mistakes and the input is really good. You can't learn from practice.
Reinforcement.
You only learn from instruction and then practice. And so basically, think about the way the brain works. Okay, basically, we're continually trying to figure out what we're getting. Okay, we're getting a lot of input. Okay, we think we understand it. Okay, we go to apply it and oops, we didn't quite have it. Okay, so we essentially get more instruction. Okay, we try again. Okay, and maybe we get a little closer, we're understanding a little more. But we can't have mastery until we really understand and build the correct model. And it doesn't, we just don't do it automatically. You and I could be sitting here talking and you're getting one idea of what I'm saying and I have another idea of what I'm saying. And it's only in the conversation back and forth that we're instructing one another to essentially really understand one another. And that's
right.
True with anything with the brain. We're always building a model.
Right. Got it. So maybe traditional programs of practice are relying on instruction happening somewhere else, and therefore they just can come on and practice. But to your point, if they're not getting the instruction required, then the practice is only getting them so far.
And you also have to recognize that in a classroom, they're delivering instruction to everyone. They can't target on 30 different kids on where they are to build the correct model. Okay, a computer essentially is very patient. Okay, we can repeat things many ways, and we probably have 30 different teachers who have inputted to the instruction. So we have one teacher teaching it this way, we have another teacher tweaking it this way. The things you can do with a computer that an individual person could never do in a classroom of 30 students.
No, that's a great point. And even as you think about the depth that exists or the breadth in Reading Coach, it's not just about phonics either. There's a lot of foundational skills that maybe you identified in your research or Dr. Mather has talked about beyond dyslexia itself. But it's like, as you're putting together this foundational layer for being able to read, how does Coach, I guess, build foundational skills in other ways other than phonics?
Okay. Well, my reading coach was initially a phonics program. Later, we added phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And finally, we added our grammar model. Now, our grammar model doesn't teach writing, although it could be a byproduct of what we do. But what we're really doing in our grammar modules, we're teaching kids when and how to chunk text into smaller, meaningful units. Students are taught to build a mental picture of each of the little chunks and then update their picture as they continue to read, thereby enhancing both comprehension and fluency.
Got it. So clearly a holistic science of reading approach, not just one skill set, which you've honed and refined early, like you mentioned in phonics, but being able to now apply a number of other foundational skills. I think that one of the unique things that you referenced is how do you differentiate instruction, right, in a classroom with multiple students? And we know it's an effective teaching strategy, but Dr. Mather, why does it play such a pivotal role when working with students that might have cognitive disabilities or differences?
Well, in terms of, differentiation with children with reading problems, I mean, they're all at different developmental levels. So the type of instruction, that they need can, really vary. It might be you have to start out with phonological awareness and phonics and structural analysis, where you teach them how to break words into syllables, building rate, working on spelling. And so you really need individualized programs, for students who have reading challenges, because they're at different places in development. And so the instruction, has to be geared to where they are developmentally, and then challenge them and kind of, move them along. And so it's just really important that we have to individualize with our children who are struggling, with reading and learning.
Got it. And has that view been pretty consistent, or has it evolved at all over time?
I think it's actually been pretty consistent in terms of what people with reading challenges need. If you look back, even in the 1920s, 1930s, there's people writing about, the specific needs of individuals who struggle to learn to read. But, it just seems somehow we seem to forget those things, but there's really been quite a bit known for a long time about how we best help children who struggle to learn to read.
Okay. Well, let's maybe take some time or put some attention to that topic a little bit. Obviously, that was a big thing that you addressed a little bit earlier about teaching teachers and sort of scaling your efforts in particular. And so Reading Coach has its direct or explicit instruction that really helps differentiate at the teacher level, at the student level. But what should we talk about relative to teacher preparedness? Teachers that are in teaching 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade that maybe don't have the foundational knowledge of how to teach foundational skills and how to read, because they're usually in the reading to learn side of the house. What did you think about, Judith? How did you put things together? There's, I know, a comprehensive reading course and a couple of others, like Understanding Dyslexia, that you really wanted to make sure teachers were prepared. How do they support teachers in their understanding of science of reading?
Well, I'll answer that.
Okay. Yeah.
The Understanding Dyslexia course is just a 3-hour course that was designed to give teachers and parents just a basic understanding, of dyslexia. So the teachers would understand this is real, it's a problem, you need to have a basic understanding. The comprehensive reading course for educators is 40 to 45 hours long, and it's pretty in-depth in terms of providing targeted reading instruction to children. Because, one of the things really we've known for a while is many teachers didn't get the kind of preparation needed to be able to help students, with reading challenges. And so really every teacher in school needs to be a reading teacher and have an, understanding, of reading challenges and how to support students. And so those two courses were added on just to, again, address the teacher problem. And one of the things that Judith had noted is when the students start doing MindPlay, in many situations, they would know more about reading instruction than their teachers. They'll say, well, that's an unvoiced consonant digraph. And the teacher just looks at them with wide eyes like, what are you even talking about? Having kind of no idea, what the student, and so the students start knowing more. And so that was sort of the catalyst at the beginning to, let's create courses so that teachers feel that they have more knowledge about reading than their students who've been taking MindPlay that really have been taught these things. And so that sort of began, it's like, need to create teacher training, as well.
Right. No, it makes sense. And, with such a heavy emphasis on the science of reading, at least in public discourse and sometimes at the legislative level over the last number of years, have you seen any particular shifts or changes at the university level as we're educating new teachers coming out with an emphasis on the science of reading?
I think that's really more of a university by university kind of question. I think there are some universities making great strides. I think, there's others that are still kind of doing what they did 10 years ago. So I think it's just kind of variable and depends a bit on who their professors are and what their professors believe, So, I think it's still, kind of variable. And you'll still hear teachers say, nobody ever taught me that. Nobody ever taught me that. And feeling a little bit kind of angry about it in a way, like, I should have learned those things as, part of my teacher training. Why didn't anyone teach me that, But, yeah.
Well, it seems to me that with then lack of consistency across the country, courses like a comprehensive reading course or understanding dyslexia made available to teachers is as relevant today as it has ever been, because there isn't maybe that level of consistent instruction for teachers depending on what they got at their university experience.
Yeah, and all teachers want to help children with reading, and so it's just they don't feel prepared or don't know how or don't know what to do. And so I think every teacher out there wants to help a child who's struggling with reading. So
yeah, that seems to be one thing we can universally agree upon. Anyone listening to this is that the desire for teachers to do right by their students is the most common reason everyone gets in. I love that part about it, but yet we need to make sure that they're equipped with the skills themselves as teachers and educators to help that happen. Well, it's been a lovely conversation with you both. I usually like to wrap up pointing our audience to the future. I like to ask people to pull out their crystal ball and tell us a little bit about what is to come. Judith, in particular, you've been a visionary for many, many decades about this. And so maybe I'll start with you. Are there things that you see today that you would say are trends that you're confident will continue 5 to 10 years from now? Or what would you sort of opine on in your crystal ball understanding of where you think things are going over the next 5 or 10 years?
With the advances in AI, a lot is possible. And first, for instance, in terms of learning faster, okay, the only thing that prevents us from learning faster is developing a model, the right model, quicker, right? So
Sure.
If AI can get to the point where we can have even more explicit segments, that would essentially help the process. We can essentially get a kid up a grade level in 20 hours. But with AI, its ability to target, we should be able to do it in something like 10 or maybe less. And that would be great. The other thing that I think is really exciting is that we can make the learning process a lot more fun. Now, my reading coach is not exactly the most fun product. It's quick, it gets you there, but I wouldn't say that it's a joy to work with, although you are learning. So I think something that would make the learning more fun would be really great, because learning is always fun when we let our mind play.
I love it. And how about you, Dr. Mather? Any foresight around the next 5 to 10 years in your crystal ball?
Well, I agree with Judith. I think AI is going to, we're already seeing some kind of neat applications in terms of teaching reading. And one of the problems is even when teachers know how to teach reading, lots of times they don't have enough time, or they've got too many kids on their roll. And so, making sure that all teachers, have enough time to work with our kids, with dyslexia. I really hope as we move through that there's more of a focus on early intervention for students. And so, we catch them right at the beginning before they even know that they're struggling with reading, we kind of, get them right away. And, so I want to just read you a little quote from Dyslexia Inspired, where she says, "Imagine a time when people with dyslexia can say they had a wonderful school experience with proper help, supports, and understanding of their unique strengths and learning needs." And so, I hope that's something in the future too, where every child with dyslexia can say how wonderful school was and how much they were supported and understood, and also valued for their strengths. I think, too often, when you're struggling with something, it's easy to overlook, but you're so great at this, and you're going to be very successful with this. Just like, Judith, who struggled with reading, was so successful with math. And so many of our kids with dyslexia have strengths. And so, we kind of in the future need to focus more on the strengths of our students and, what they do well, as well as providing them with the proper supports.
Yeah, that's great. And I do think that as we learn more and become more educated and understanding of the nuances of differences and assets and strengths that we bring to the table, I do see a future in which we'll be able to be more personalized, and that will help each student be able to kind of chart their own path towards success. Well, I've really appreciated having you both on today. Thank you so much for telling us a little bit about the history and origin of MindPlay and its super successful reading coach product, and Dr. Mather, your influence on it, and the work that you've done with students with dyslexia and disabilities over the years. It's been a treat for me, so thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found today's conversation insightful, be sure to subscribe to Literacy Mindset. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube for updates, resources, and to join the conversation. Have a topic you'd like us to explore? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time.